Good morning. I'm glad to see you all here, and this is not my first time here. Even in this pulpit back in 1988 or thereabouts, in the primordial darkness, I had the privilege of preaching here. I'm a bit out of sorts today because Carolina lost in basketball to Miami yesterday. But we'll try to deal with that. Whoever can forget that marvelous and vivid picture of Gene Kelly coming down the street, dancing and singing while being rained on. And it wasn't just raining, it was coming down cats and dogs. It was a regular deluge. And the amazing thing was that he was fully clothed. Suit, shirt, hat, tie, socks, shoes. I think he was wearing brown shoes and a blue suit. And he was dancing and singing as he came. It was quite a picture. He also had an umbrella. He did not use the umbrella to shelter himself from the rain. It was used more as a cane, as a dancing prop, and he was having a jolly good time, just singing and dancing in the rain, sloshing in and out of the gutter. And as he came along, he sang, "I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing, singing in the rain." I say, if you can do that, if you can sing in the rain, that is a matter of grace. That scene is etched on the corners of my mind as one of the classics of cinematic history. It is an act of grace. What happens when your parade gets rained on or your ball game gets rained out? What happens when your dreams go up in smoke? What happens when tragedy strikes or you lose somebody you love? What happens then when your best laid plans go awry? Are you then able to sing when the storm's clouds come and descend on you and the rain beats at you? Are you able then to sing in the rain? I say again, if you can do that, if you can sing, then it is an act of singular grace. Indeed, if you can sing in that kind of deluge, it is a sacramental act. And here I use the word sacrament as St. Augustine used it. St. Augustine defined the sacrament as an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. That's important. Remember that. An outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. The outward and visible sign, of course, is the song you are able to sing. The inward and spiritual grace is that undaunted human spirit that is able never to give in, that is able to sing, that is able to look at the worst that life can dish out and see only the best, that is able to look for opportunity in every difficulty, even when it rains. Maya Angelou, that wonderful black woman who taught for a while at Wake Forest University. I'm a native North Carolinian, so I make all these references to North Carolina. Maya Angelou recalled her early days as a youth growing up, when her life was so hard. In those days, life for black people was a difficult thing. And she remembered being hungry most of the time. She remembered being abused. She remembered all of the negative things that had happened to her when her life was so hard. And she wrote a wonderful little book about it. And the book was entitled, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Dear lady, you have discovered one of life's great treasures. To know that when life offers you only a cage to imprison you, you can still sing. That's why the caged bird sings. And the question, I think, for those of us gathered here today is, do you know how to sing when it rains? Let me say to you that you will never learn to be able to sing in the rain unless you have Jesus Christ in your life. As a matter of fact, I believe that you don't ever really come to know yourself unless you first come to know Jesus Christ. And that is a fact. That wonderful play, and this is how I would illustrate what I mean by that. That wonderful play, Godspell, opens with a group of people out on the stage who are expressing their despair about life. The hammer blows of life have been too heavy for them. And so they're sitting on the stage, and some of them are doing nothing but sitting there in stony silence, staring into space. They are dressed in gray sweatsuits, because that's what life is. Life is dull and gray. They don't really go out and do anything. Life is just a dull affair. And over on stage right, there is the music that begins to perk up. And onto the stage there comes a singer. And he sees the people there, and he hears their despair. And he has compassion on them. He is John the Baptist. And so he sings his prayer of intercession for them. When wilt thou save the people, O God of mercy? When? The people, Lord, the people, not thrones and crowns, but men. God save the people, for thine they are, thy children, as thine angels fare. Save the people from despair. And then he leaves the stage this way. And the music dies down, and then it begins to pick up again over here. And this time, another person comes onto the stage. He is not dressed as the people are dressed in gray sweatsuits. He's dressed like a clown. in bright and vivid colors. And that is a symbol of his life. His life is rich and meaningful, colorful, if you will. That's Jesus Christ. And as he comes out onto the stage and dances among the people, he begins to touch each one of them one by one. And at his touch, they leave the stage this way. And your eyes, you don't see that because your eyes are following the dancer who is moving in this direction. And then after a while, they come back onto the stage. And this time, they are not wearing gray sweatsuits. They are dressed as the clown himself is dressed. They are dressed as Jesus Christ is dressed, because that is what happens at the touch of Christ. He causes their lives to change. Their lives become rich and meaningful and colorful. Life becomes, in that kind of situation, life becomes what the psychiatrists call an integrated personality. That is to say, you get your whole act together then. And you become a child of God. Well, you become the kind of person who no longer needs to be critical of other people, because you know who you are. You don't have to question who you are again. You are a child of God. Now, being Methodists, I want to call attention to the founder of United Methodism, to John Wesley. John Wesley set sail from Land's End, England, in 1735 aboard the HMS Simmons, bound for the American colony of Georgia. He was full of idealism. He was convinced that he was going to convert, as he called them, the noble savages in this country. And so he set sail. But he was like John Madden, you know, the sportscaster who at one time was a football player and a coach and won the Super Bowl and then became a sportscaster. John Madden was afraid to fly to the venues of the football games. And John Wesley was afraid to make the Atlantic crossing because more than one of those little wooden boats had gone down to the deep Six. And sure enough, as it happened, a terrible storm at sea arose. And here is the picture. They bolted the benches on the ship down to the deck. And here's this picture of John Wesley hiding under a bench on the deck of the ship with holding on for dear life to the bench leg. And he later wrote in his journal, "I was deeply ashamed that I was so afraid to die." And he looked up while he was hiding under the bench, and he saw a group of people standing up in the bow of the ship. They were the word isn't Mormon. I can't think of the word now. But there they were standing, the Moravians. There they were standing up in the bow of the ship, singing hymns of praise to God. And there by contrast was Wesley hiding under a bench. Well, Fortunately, Wesley didn't die in the storm, but he was curious about the Moravians. They were under the sponsorship of Count Zinzendorf and coming to America looking for religious freedom. And so Wesley walked up to the leader of the Moravians and he said, this is his English, by the way, "Was you not afraid to die?" And the Moravian leader looked at him and said, "I thank God, no." And Wesley had a puzzled look on his face. And he said, "But your women and children, surely they were afraid to die." And he said, "I thank God, no." And Wesley looked puzzled. The leader of the Moravians said to him, with a heart that understood, "Do you know Jesus Christ?" Well, you know, if he'd asked me, I would have probably been offended. That's such is my nature. I could have said to him, "Well, listen, I went to school at Carolina, and then I went to Wesley Theological Seminary, and I have an undergraduate and a graduate degree, and the last 4 years were spent in trying to learn who Jesus Christ was. I think if anybody knows who Jesus Christ is, it's me." Well, John Wesley was a lot more polite than probably I would have been. His answer to the Moravian was this: "I know Jesus Christ to be the Savior of the world." And the Moravian leader looked at him and said, oh yes, he is the Savior of the world. But do you know him to be your Savior? You see, there's a big difference between intellectual information about Jesus Christ and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. A big, big difference. And there, you see, I think is the critical question: do you know him to be your Savior? You know, I remember that back in the days while I was at seminary, I was learning a lot of things. I learned a lot about soteriology and existential metaphysics. And I thought to myself, when I went to my first appointment at a farming community up in Loudoun County, I thought, what in the world am I going to preach to those people? Well, they were patient people. They learned an awful lot about soteriology and existential metaphysics and stuff like that. But back to Wesley. It was not until John Wesley wandered into a meeting on Aldersgate Street when he was back in London, after he had failed miserably at converting the noble savages, after he had failed miserably to be a pastor to the people in Georgia, and after he had been driven out of almost every pulpit in London, that he came to this meeting at Aldersgate Street, and he wrote in his journal, "I felt my heart strangely warm, and I knew that Jesus was my Savior." And that was after he had seen the people on board the ship singing in the rain. Well, There's another thing to be said if you want to learn to sing in the rain. Be offensive. Now, anybody who really knows me knows that I have no trouble with that. I'm about as offensive as they come. And so I've decided that I'm misusing the word. I mean to say, be aggressive. Learn how to be aggressive. What's the typical knee-jerk reaction in your mind when it begins to rain, especially if it's raining hard? Why? You look for shelter. You run for cover. You run for some place where it's safe and dry, and so that you can be dry until the rain stops, and then you can go out and start living again in the world. It never seems to occur to us that the rain itself may be the occasion for an opportunity to do something that is good and wonderful, something that might be of help to somebody else. Back in the days of the Second World War, the first meeting of the American forces with the German army was on Tobruk in North Africa, and the Americans lost that battle. A correspondent wrote about that. This is no criticism of the brave American troops. They fought nobly and well. The criticism was more with the leadership of the Americans. They seemed to be waiting around to see what the Germans would do. And consequently, the battle was lost. And that is precisely why I think they sent General Patton into that area to get the American army moving again, to get them not so much to be on the defensive, but to be on the offensive. We betray being defensive in our language. We talk about defending our freedoms and defending our way of life. What Patton did was not to talk about being defensive, to wait and see what the Germans would do, but to get them on the attack. And that's what we need to do when the rains begin to come. We need to see it as an opportunity for doing something good. The scripture lesson that I read today talked about Paul and Silas being thrown into prison. Now, you know, I've noticed this, that Paul and Silas were not Methodist, because had they been Methodist, they would have called a meeting. Or, better yet, they would have written a pamphlet on what to do while in jail. But Paul and Silas, thank God they were not Methodist, because they already knew what to do. They held a revival meeting, and they sang hymns in the night, and they converted the jailer and his whole family. And that way, they were able to do something beautiful and wonderful. Now, I'm not the man I used to be. You may have noticed that I'm using a cane these days because of a terrible hitch in my get-along. I fall a lot. Right after Thanksgiving, I fell on my tiled porch, and my glasses were driven back into my eyes, and I ended up with 2 black eyes. It looked as if I were a bandit or something. I told people that I preferred the title Zorro. My wife and I lost our daughter when she was 31 years old. She left us a grandson. They came to live with us when he was 3. He's now 27. He's been with us all this time. We've been his caretakers. Whoever said that getting old is no game for sissies knew what he was talking about, because I've had both knees replaced. I've had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 strokes. I have now this thing in my hip which causes me to walk with a cane. I've had a litany of difficulties, too numerous for me to go into all of them. But when people ask me, how are you doing? My answer